They have a combined 12 years in the National Football League. They combined for 65 career sacks, 232 tackles, 1 Pro Bowl selection, and 1 Employee of the Month award.
That's just a straight shooter with upper management written all over him.
It's Train and Grose on the All AZ Podcast Network.
Welcome in, Train and Grose, episode number 40.
Wow.
Episode number 40, Train and Grose. Today's podcast is brought to you by the Black and White Cookie.
Now, because it's 40, it's number 40, is this podcast going through a midlife crisis?
It wants to go buy a Corvette.
I just need to know.
It wants to go buy a Corvette.
A red one. A red Corvette
after the show.
We're getting started early, brother.
Question for you, though, when
Yes.
it comes to the black and white cookie.
Yes. More, please.
And we all did it, so I'm assuming I may be already answering my own question, but when you eat the black and white cookie,
Yep.
you have to take your first bite right down the middle, right? Where you
Without
get a little
question.
bit of left, a little bit of
Without
right, a
question.
little bit of white, a little bit of black.
Without question.
I think it's the only way to do it.
start.
And it's delicious. Well, once you get a couple bites in, then it becomes impossible. You got to bite your way back to it.
Yeah, so then I went chocolate, then vanilla to end it up. That's
right.
just
I still got a-
personal preference, I guess.
I got a handful of chocolate left.
I said before we started recording, I believe.
Wow.
I never know what's being recorded around here.
No, you don't. You don't. And it'll make its way online. You be careful now.
Yeah.
You wouldn't dare.
You be careful
Yeah.
now.
Just like with Handful of Chocolate.
I don't even remember what it was.
I
I was going to say, this is like a... Thank you very much, Bertrand Barry. I said, this is getting to be like a kid's soccer game. Like, we got snacks beforehand. Like,
and it's important.
Bertrand,
You're going to be judged.
Miss Tasty's pretzels.
If you come weak with the snacks, you will be judged. I'm just telling you.
Sean ponied up for some apple fritters
fritters?
not
Yeah,
too long ago.
yeah.
Now the black and white cookies.
Yeah,
it's like
awesome.
when we got the sign-up sheet when you were kids, orange
Yeah.
slices and juice boxes and all that fun stuff.
I feel like Horseshack from Welcome Back, Carter. Ooh, ooh, ooh! I got next. Ooh, ooh. That may be that may be out of the range of a lot of the listeners.
That's good stuff. That's 70s.
Yeah.
70s throwback.
Yeah,
But anyways,
man.
podcast number 40, and it
Number 40.
coincides with the elimination of the Phoenix Suns. But,
Yeah.
we're recording this on a Friday, so we're several days removed. And I think the disappointment, obviously, that you're going to feel after losing in the NBA Finals as a fan base is...
It's not going away.
I was going to say it's dissipating a little bit.
No.
Not that you'll ever be happy with it, but I think understanding, and I listen during the day, listen to a lot of sports talk radio around the Valley, and even the Dan Patrick Show. So I don't know who to give this credit to when I'm going to say this, but if I would have come in here when we were recording the podcast closest to the start of the NBA season and said, guys, I guarantee you that when we do this in July, we're going to be talking about the Suns in the NBA Finals. You both would have laughed me out of the room, and rightfully so at the time. So when you put it in the context of what the expectations were of this Phoenix Suns team to what they delivered, that's the part I'm talking about in terms of the understanding. And like I said, you're never going to be happy with a loss. Understand that. But that's kind of where I'm going with that comment.
Mike, we could even talk about the beginning of the playoffs. We talked about what would be a satisfactory season for the Phoenix Suns. And we said if they were to win 1 or 2 playoff series, that would be satisfactory for this team. It would be something to build on. And nobody, even at that point, did we think that they would make a run all the way to the finals. Now, to be fair, both teams had a lot of luck in order to get to the finals. But anytime that you make a run in the playoffs in any professional sport, luck has to play a role. There is going to be good fortune bestowed upon those teams that are playing for the championship. So to say that this is a unique year where injuries just played a role, that's not fair, because there have been plenty of seasons. And just about every season, you can look towards an injury or something happened late in the season that derailed a team that everybody thought was a surefire can't-miss team that was going to play for a championship, and they found themselves on the outside looking in.
And there's plenty of stories when you can look at teams that were given the opportunity and didn't take advantage of it.
Yes.
Right? So, to your point, you get lucky, if you want to call it that, or you're
presented with an
opportunity, good fortune of playing an opponent who maybe is not at 100%. Maybe their key player is going through some injuries, whatever the case may be. That's fine. You still got to beat them. You know, in the case of the NBA, you still got to figure out a way to win 4 games against the Lakers.
That's right.
Still got to figure out a way to beat the Nuggets and the Clippers. So you don't have to apologize for it, because you know you could go back to that Lakers series and when the Suns were down, you're like, damn, it doesn't matter. Like there's that big a difference. They figured it out and they dispatched with the Los Angeles Lakers.
Yes.
So don't apologize for it.
No,
because you go back in history and say, look at this team that did not take advantage of that opportunity they were given. So it is what it is. It's part of sports.
Mike, there's so many different ways we can go with this. First, I think we have to give Giannis Antetokounmpo a lot of credit for what he was able to do, coming from that last series where we weren't sure if he was even going to play in the final.
Didn't play against the Hawks.
Didn't play in the Game 7 or Game 6 where they clinched it. And then you find him in the first game still kind of gimpy, not really looking like the Giannis that we've come to expect out of a 2-time MVP, a Defensive Player of the Year. And my goodness, he came back with a vengeance, and he let it be known that the knee is fine and I am here to win a championship, because we talked about it, and even though we had the cookie already, Mike, we should have dipped a little crow in there too, because we both said that there's no way that the Milwaukee Bucks could come back and win 4 out of the next 5. Well, they won 4 straight. Mm-hmm. So I digress, and I give the Bucks all the credit in the world. They did what they needed to do, and they were led by their superstar in Giannis Antetokounmpo, who was rightfully so named the unanimous Finals MVP.
So here's the thing for me, when you look at Giannis and how he, just if there was ever a question about it, put it on full display in this Finals. In Game 6, not anything.
17 for 19.
That was right where I'm going.
17 for 19.
Because what was the one key? What was the knock? What are you going to do?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
That was the knock. And even, so you got the fans in Phoenix taking full advantage of it. You've got the announcers talking about it. Well, you get the ball in his hands and whatever happens, happens.
And he even talked about it.
17 of 19.
Yes.
You talk, to me, that goes to a certain mental toughness at that point. Because
laser focus, Mike.
Right?
Laser focus.
You do that, and you hit it head on if you know you got that problem. Because you know what's going to happen in that game. If you're the Suns, you did the right thing. It didn't work out too well, 17 to 19, but putting him on the line for 19 tries at the beginning of the game, you're like, okay, that's a recipe for success. And he's like, no, it's not, because I'm going to look like Isaiah Thomas right now shooting free throws.
Mike, if he hits his free throws and he develops an outside shot, what is the NBA going to do with Giannis Antetokounmpo?
He's 26.
He's got room. That's what I'm saying. But think about it. Think about what he's already accomplished. He's already he was all rookie his rookie year. He was most improved a year. I forget, like 2017. He's already been a 2-time MVP. He's been a Defensive Player of the Year. He's been an All-Star Game MVP. Now he's the Finals MVP. What else is it going to take for people to finally look at this man and say he is one of the best, if not the best player in the game right now?
I think there's no question about that. To your point,
at 26,
as he is,
he's
right
done all
now,
that at 26.
As he is at 26, he's all that. And to your point, there's a couple, if you're giving criticism or feedback, there's a couple areas he could shore up if he does it. And based on our conversation about the free throws, do you think he won't do it? Like this guy, the motivation, the drive, whatever. You want to have fun. Go back and read the draft previews.
Yes.
And there was one guy, and I wish I would have saved it so we could give credit where credit's due. They said they gave his upside downside potential of who he might compare to in the NBA. And the upside, if he develops well and works on his game, he could become a Lamar Odom.
Wow.
That's who the comparison was on the upside. Gosh. And, but everything else, it was spot on in terms of where he was. The one thing that you don't capture in a draft preview, particularly when you see a kid coming over from Europe the way he did playing in Greece, is that work ethic, that drive, what the mental part of the game is.
Yes.
And that's everything you're seeing here is the mental part of the game, the willingness to go work, the willing to hone your craft and get better, not be satisfied with the fact that you got here and look for ways to improve. And he's done it, man. 50-50
Mike,
in a deciding game.
And the fact that he stayed with a low or a smaller market team. The fact that he didn't go chase a ring by combining with another set of all-stars. And he talked about it in the press game.
He snubbed his nose at that idea.
Absolutely. He's like, I mean, yeah, that's easy to do. Anybody can go do that. But I chose to stay. And the fact that he showed loyalty to the team that drafted him, that spoke a lot. But I took a few notes in reference to the Suns, Mike.
Yep. And
here are a couple things that stand out to me about the Suns. This was a great run by Monty Williams and Devin Booker and Chris Paul and DeAndre Ayton. All these guys elevated their level of play, and I think they all walked away with a lion's share of respect around the NBA. But here's some things that are actually things that I feel like are going to be daunting things that they're going to have to overcome. One, they're going to have to find another great scorer. They're going to have to find another guy that can put the ball in the hole on a consistent basis. You can't just rely on your two guards because one's 36, going on 37. If he decides to come back, that's still up in the air.
That's on the list, yep.
That's on the list. But then you think about Chris Paul. Will he ever be a dominant player that can consistently play throughout the course of the playoffs? Because we saw him at his all-time best as far as availability this year. We weren't sure how available he was going to be, but he wound up getting over the shoulder, getting over COVID, and coming back and being that difference maker in the conference finals against the LA Clippers. And then you saw him in games 1 and 2 look like Chris Paul that we've always known him to be, CP3. But then you go games 3 through 6, it didn't look like the same Chris Paul. The injury, whatever happened, he just didn't look the same. Something was very poignant. There was a certain point in this series where he went from looking like CP3 to just Chris Paul, the old guy. And I don't know what that was. He wouldn't talk about it, but they're going to have to look at that. The other aspect of this, Mike, is they're going to have to try to get back through the West again.
Yeah.
Like, this was a magical run. There was never going to be a better opportunity to win a championship than this year. Because let me just name a few teams. I wrote this down. Dallas is going to be up and coming. Utah was the number 1 seed this year. Both LA teams, Clippers and the Lakers, you know the Lakers are definitely not going to stand pat.
No.
And have LeBron James and Anthony Davis waste their prime years. That's not going to happen. You still got Denver, who's got the reigning MVP, oh, by the way. And then Golden State will be back.
Yep.
Klay Thompson will be back. Steph Curry will be back. Draymond Green will be back. And you know they're going to try to add a piece. And there's still other teams we haven't even talked about, Mike.
Well, so to the point in terms of the Suns in this offseason, who's front and center on this keeping it together and building for the future is Robert Sarver. Like, he's got some decisions to make.
But really, James Jones. If Robert Sarver does what he did just this year and allow James Jones to be what he was.
What he did this offseason, this past offseason, will have to be duplicated and increased in terms of the financial commitment.
Sure.
Did Robert Sarver learn enough and enjoy this enough to say the checkbook is open? And by the checkbook, I mean paying the players and then the residual luxury tax implications, because that's really what it's going to take. Because you're going to have to spend some money. You're going to have to spend some serious money. And cause to your point, like when you look at this roster, and I think part of the grieving process has morphed into the what do we do about and how do we feel about Chris Paul? Because you could go on Twitter and there's two camps. Like, we got to have him back, whatever it takes. Got to have him back. And then the other side is the screw that, man. Look at him. Like, what the negative narrative? Like, didn't do it again in the finals. Down, up 0-2, loses. It's neither is entirely true, I don't think, but there are some questions. What are you going to do with DA? He's due. You're going to have to take care of him now. I don't know how high that number goes, but I think it's higher now than it was at the end of the regular season, and DA's got to stay. And then you got to figure out the rest of it. You need another guard on this team, because even if you get Chris Paul back, who's your point guard of the future? So you got a lot of questions that come up. And I looked at it. The Bucks have already made that decision. Their big three are locked up for an additional, at the end of it, 3 years. Giannis more than that.
Yes.
But Drew Holiday, Chris Middleton, and obviously Giannis, they're all back for 1, 2, 3 more years. So they've had that decision.
Yeah.
You can go on the sites that track that. Giannis got the Supermax, and the other 2 are on the Bird exceptions. And so they've made that decision. They've made that commitment. And so now you've got to see that here.
Mike, the number 44 was the first number I ever wore playing football, team organized football. It's ironic that we're having this discussion about Chris Paul because there is a 1-year, $44 million deal for Chris Paul. He's got a player option. He can either opt in or opt out. When we went into the playoffs, we said he is worth that and some. Mm-hmm. We both sat up here. The three of us sat up here and we just said, oh, there's no doubt. 1 year for $44 million for Chris Paul, what he's brung to the table,
yep.
Absolutely you bring him back. Now, fast forward to the end of the finals, and we saw Chris Paul at the end not looking like CP3. Are you willing to pay $44 million for 1 year to run that back with CP3, not knowing if he can give it to you when you need it most?
Well, right. Or, one at 44 is an interesting question. And if he opts out, but you're still in the conversation, 3 at 90, 3 at 100?
It's not going to be 44. So
it won't be per year, but that overall investment
but I'm saying
be substantial.
To have the services of Chris Paul is not going to be just $44 million now.
No, exactly. I think we're on the same page
there. It's going to be much more expensive. His price went up, unfortunately. Yeah. And I just wonder if you're Robert Sarver, to your point, Mike, if he feels that he can commit that type of money to an agent, to a 36-year-old who we just saw barely got through an entire season healthy.
Yeah. No, I think it's a great question, and I think you're exactly right. It's a two-part conversation. If this team is to move forward, it's Robert Sarver making a commitment and saying, look, here's what we can do financially, whatever that is. And it's his money, far be it from me or anybody else to say, here's how you should spend it.
Yep.
But the question is, does he make that commitment, which would include player salaries and the looming salary tax if you go all in for all the things that you need to do? That's step number one.
Right.
And then step number two, the point that you made and I agree with, which is then turn over complete control to your general manager and let him do what he did very well this year.
Yes.
Right? Let him do what he did very well. And so that's the question. Do you see those two things happen? It's like a 1 and a 1A in my mind. You can't say, well, go ahead and do it, but to James Jones, but then you got to run every little decision by me.
Through me. No,
right?
Can't happen.
Because if I'm on my boat in San Diego and you can't find me and you got a deal to make, you need to know you have the ultimate authority to make those deals, even if it's going to cost me a lot of money down the line.
But from a philosophy standpoint, Mike, are you willing to put your hat in the ring with all those teams that I mentioned? Because the only way you can stay in contention with all those teams, you got to pay. In today's NBA, you've got to pay to be in contention. You can't just run that back and try to play it cheap and stay on the court with the LA Clippers, LA Lakers, the Utah Jazz, the Dallas Mavericks, Denver Nuggets, the Golden State Warriors, because those teams have already tasted a little bit of success, and they know that there's a cost to be the boss.
Yeah, and it's interesting. Like, you got your big names you got to take care of. Obviously, Chris Paul, DA, what we're going to do here. Then the other thing too is kind of those secondary decisions, which at the time seem inconsequential, but when you do make these runs and you lose a guy like Dario Saric, because
that was killer, Mike. That proved to be a huge loss
because it exposed DA in some respect. Like, putting all that pressure on him. No offense to Frank,
having to guard Giannis.
No offense to Frank the Tank, but you need a guy like Dario.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. So that's what I'm saying. You got your big decisions, but once you get to 1 through 5 locked down, 6, 7, I don't know how deep you need to go, but 6, 7, 8, those are important decisions.
Yeah, and Mike, I think to wrap it up, you have to give a lot of credit to the Milwaukee Bucks.
Credit.
They earned that. Yeah. They did what they needed to do. They got a much needed win here in Phoenix, which I wasn't sure if was going to be possible with the way that this crowd was bringing it each and every night. But they did what they had to do, and they were able to wrap it up on their home turf. And you got to be happy for Giannis because the way that he did it. Yeah. He did it the right way. He didn't ring chase by going somewhere else. He stayed loyal, and he worked his tail off, Mike. He is the epitome of hard work will get you everything you want in life.
Absolutely. 2 quick things related before we get out of here. A lot of conversation about LeBron sitting front and center courtside for the game here in Phoenix. Any issues with that?
I thought it was genius on his part. I mean, he had everything that he was trying to sell on full display, including a full liquor bottle.
Right.
He was advertising everything: sunglasses, liquor bottle, shirt.
By the way, you have a movie out.
Oh, by the way, I have a movie out. I mean, he was a walking bill. He was a walking 10, 20-second commercial. He really was. And I think for him, now, of course, he's going to wrap it into I'm supporting my friend Chris Paul. Right. And first and foremost, yes, because he did pay his own money to sit in that seat, because that seat was not cheap by any stretch of the imagination. But for what he gained, I thought it was brilliant for him to go out there and be front court.
A lot of people upset about that, saying he was tampering or whatever. It's
their best friend. He's godfather to Chris Paul's son. What are you talking about?
I get it. I'm just the in the moment reaction.
Yeah, well, I mean, it just sounds like a little jealousy to me.
It's because of the fact that Magic Johnson tweeted out 30 minutes after the game was over that Chris Paul should come be a Laker next year, and then you had LeBron there courtside, and so people are kind of talking about the whole tampering ways. But Magic Johnson's not tied to the Lakers at all, technically
who
anymore.
Who cares what the owner of the Dodgers thinks about the?
Yeah, and I mean, okay, who is he supposed to cheer for? He played his whole career where? For the Lakers.
Right.
He didn't have a secondary team. He didn't have a third team or a fourth team to talk up. He's speaking about one team and one team only. So if he's talking about, Chris Paul coming to play where he used to play, well, what do you think he's talking about?
I got you. It's just interesting to see the reaction to certain things.
Well, I mean, LeBron is going to always be that lightning rod. He's going to be a controversial figure no matter what he does.
Well, and you touched on it a minute ago. It's kind of the opposite of the Giannis point of view. Like, to your point, if you could give him a shot of that truth serum and say, what are you really doing here? It's like, damn, I want Chris Paul to play with me next year in Los Angeles. And that's the exact opposite of the Giannis thing. Something
that the commissioner a couple years ago actually nixed, because before he was going to go to play with the Clippers, there was a deal in place for him to play with the Lakers and Kobe and all those guys.
Second thing to talk about real quickly, Coach going in the locker room after the game.
Great moment.
When they played it, I thought, man, what a class act.
Great
it really
moment.
Reinforces everything. But again, maybe it's our social media or 24/7 cable sports networks. You got to have something to talk about. Monty Williams taking a little bit of heat, saying, and I'm going to paraphrase here, but look at Monty Williams trying to make it about him, which I don't understand and certainly don't agree with.
Oh, that's just an unnecessary shot. Mike, as far back as I can remember watching pro basketball, I remember players on the losing teams going into the locker room and congratulating the other. Remember, before the 2000s, basically, there was no real celebration on the court. Everything was done in the locker room.
Right.
The trophy was presented in the locker room. The guys had the paper or the plastic all over the lockers because they were going to, spray the champagne everywhere. That's where everything happened. And so only in recent history do you see these stages being brought out at the end of the game and these platforms that the players and their family and loved ones are supposed to stand on and get all of this attention and praise. So one of my favorite memories is Magic Johnson pouring champagne all over Isaiah Thomas after they had just fought like dogs on the court. I mean, they went after each other. They kissed each other in game one.
Remember?
And then they went after each other, and they probably socked each other in game two. You know what I mean?
No, totally.
But I always remember him in his Laker uniform pouring that champagne over the top of Isaiah Thomas's head, congratulating his friend.
Yeah, I thought it was unnecessary, and like I said, I think it's a byproduct of kind of the era that we live in.
Just salty that
people got take advantage of whatever platform they're on to throw shade on somebody, because whatever else you want to say about Monty Williams,
class act all
the way, and nothing in his DNA that he's shown us is it's about him.
No,
it's not a me thing. It's the exact opposite, if anything.
Mike, we talked about this on The Last Dance. Remember the scene when they're on the bus, the Bulls are on the bus, and who but Karl Malone comes on the bus and congratulates those guys by person. Hey, congratulations. Yep. You guys did it. You guys did it. That's been going on since the beginning of time, Mike. These guys compete like heck when they're on the court, but then once the clock reaches 000, they go back to being human, and they go back to being friends and guys that actually pull for one another in the big scheme of things.
And Sean just handed me the actual clip out of the Arizona Republic. How do you say this guy's name? Can you bail me out here?
Amin.
Mm-hmm. Amin Allison, former Suns executive.
Oh, Amin El-Hassan.
Yeah.
El-Hassan, I'm sorry. He's the one that he was on the Rich Eisen show.
Yes, on the Rich Eisen show.
And so the question is, the former, put that in quotes, Suns executive. Is it partly salty, or is it?
No, he has a history of making. He goes against the grain sometimes.
Okay.
He goes with a hot take at times.
All right.
But the quote is, "Let me just start by saying Monty Williams is an excellent human being. He's literally one of the best among us. A genuine good guy who was well liked and treats everybody respectfully and treats his job respectfully. A very good coach." I thought he did an awesome job with this team, not just this year, but last year. I thought he did an awesome job in these finals. It's hard to stop something like Giannis. I wish nothing but the best for Monty. There's always that but, though, right?
But
He said, having said that, I felt it was a little too look at me Louie out there. I mean, you're going to walk into the winner's locker room in the middle of their championship celebration, make them pause the celebration to say a big speech about how you've made us a better coach and how you've made us a better team. Come on.
No, you
quote.
come on, Amina.
That's the quote.
That's insane. Because, again, I can name at least 5 guys that I can remember being on the losing team, going into the locker room of the winning team and congratulating. Even go back to the hated Lakers and Celtics series. I remember Kevin McHale and all those guys going into the Lakers locker room. I remember Magic going up to Bird. Those guys had the profound respect for one another. And, of course, they wanted to win. But when the clock reached 000, they go back to being contemporaries and they go back to being friends.
The 2021 NBA season in the books, and I'm sure it's something we're going to come back to a lot
no doubt.
in coming weeks and months.
What are we going to watch on TV now?
Well, we got to your point, we got a few precious weeks to catch our breath before training
NFL
camp.
Network, they bounce from camp to camp. You watch guys just running around in shorts. It's great.
Yeah.
Right?
Okay.
Yeah, so we got a few weeks. Diamondbacks are playing the Cubs this weekend.
Oh.
We got that going. All right, on the other side, we'll jump into some NFL. As we said, that is coming front and center, and found a reason to be on the front page this morning when some news came out. So we'll keep it going on Train and Grose.
Train and Grose.
Train and Grose. Follow us on Twitter. This is easy. At Train and Grose. How easy?
Keep it simple, don't we?
How easy is that? And
simple.
if you follow us on Twitter, you get to see what shirt B-Train wears every Friday.
That's right.
When we record this thing.
That's right.
Papa Bear.
Papa Bear, baby.
Last week's
Big
shirt
Papa.
got some reaction. That was a good one.
Oh, yeah.
Father's Day shirt.
Yeah.
All right. NFL training camp in some places, 2 teams. It's open because they're getting ready to play in the
Steelers and the Cowboys.
Yeah, exactly. They play in the Hall. Your 2 favorite teams.
2 favorite teams in the whole wide world.
And there's a huge story, but I'm gonna do this one first so I don't forget.
Okay.
And then we'll get to the big news of the week. Calvin Johnson did an interview with one of the Detroit newspapers, and the reporter, it was a really good interview, talking about getting ready for him going into the Hall of Fame.
Correct.
And asked him words to the effect of, how are you going to acknowledge or how are you going to mention the Detroit Lions as part of your Hall of Fame speech? And he didn't come out and say, I'm not, but he kind of came out and said, not really worried about it.
Yeah.
So
I can give you the actual quote because
Please
it is
do.
kind of funny. Calvin Johnson says, I'm definitely going to bring up a lot of people that I'm thankful for. There's so many people during my career that had an impact, and those specific people I'm going to try to thank. At least I have them on the ticker, but I'm not going to mention everybody. As far as the Lions, hey, I got nothing to say.
Wow.
you played your entire career,
With the Detroit Lions.
which turned into a Hall of Fame career,
With the Detroit Lions.
and you got nothing to say. And this isn't the first time with this franchise. You remember how fractured
Barry Sanders.
the relationship was with Barry Sanders, and it was like you think about political events, like trying to broker a peace deal. It played out in the Detroit newspapers as they tried to repair the relationship with Barry Sanders, which they've done, and Barry Sanders is now back in the fold and a happy member of. But how is this so hard to figure out for some teams? And you look at the Lions. I'm from Detroit. I lived through this nonsense.
Yeah.
I can tell you about misery in the Pontiac Silverdome growing up.
Yep. Ford Field now.
How hard is this for some teams to figure out? Like, I don't even care. I mean, you do ultimately care. But when you hear about them, like, treating the face of their franchise, the superstars of the franchise, the one of the few things, you look at Calvin Johnson's career, look at Barry Sanders' career, and how bad these teams were in total. There were some good things, but in total, these were bad football teams over eras. How hard is it for these teams to hold up the shining examples of what was right during those time frames.
It is hard. I think it's hard because there were so many things at play, Mike. There were a lot of conversations that I'm sure we'll never be privy to that had profound effect on the relationships with Calvin Johnson and the Detroit Lions and Barry Sanders and the Detroit Lions. I'm sure they can rattle off at least 3-4 conversations that they will never forget. Like, man, I can't believe they said this to me. I can't believe they said that to me.
Right.
A guy that was willing to give them everything, and they still didn't find it in their heart and in their logic to do the right thing by me. So it's unfortunate. Think about Barry Sanders and the brilliance that he was and the nightmare that he was for me. I remember having nightmares trying to tackle this man. I have 2 career tackles, Mike. I've told you this. I had 65 career regular season sacks in my career, and I'm telling you, I would take those 2 tackles over those 65 sacks. That's how much I think of Barry Sanders.
We talk about it all the time, Sean Crespin and I, when we talk about movies. Like, if a movie comes on and it's halfway through, do you stop and watch it at that time? I say the same thing about any time you go online and either somebody posts it or you come across Barry Sanders highlights.
You got to watch it.
You have to watch them all.
And I could have seen.
Can't believe it.
There's one where the Lions, they played Tampa. Obviously, they were in the same division, and they were wearing the popsicle uniforms.
The creamsicles, yeah, baby.
And Barry Sanders destroyed the Buccaneers.
Yeah.
And I'm sure I've seen that 20 times. If it came on my phone right now, if you sent me the YouTube clip, I would watch it beginning to end.
His birthday was recent, so they were playing a lot of clips of Barry.
Yeah, the cowboy highlight where he literally turns dude around twice it's disrespectful.
Well, no, that was the Patriots.
Was a Patriots.
Yeah.
Literally turns him around twice. The Cowboys one's where he bounces around a million times.
Like a pinball against his,
Yeah, but the Patriots, that dude spins twice.
Yeah.
It's sensational.
And if you're the Ford family, you get that man to the point where right before the season starts, he's like, no, I cannot do this. I can't do it anymore. I'm going to walk away from this.
Mike, he only played 10 seasons.
Right.
And it took Emmitt Smith 5 additional seasons to catch and surpass Barry Sanders.
And I know we've had, somewhere you and I have had this conversation, whether it be on the radio show or on this podcast, and this is no disrespect to Emmitt Smith. To do what Emmitt Smith did is remarkable. He's got the kudos, the accolades, the rings. But you look at what he had around him while he was doing it versus what Barry Sanders had around him while he did what he did.
My goodness.
And it's not even close.
It's not even close.
Not even. And you know, this is the easy argument. What happens if you put Barry Sanders on those Cowboys team and let Emmitt Smith go to Detroit?
I mean, can you imagine a small Barry Sanders with those mammoths of offensive linemen that the Cowboys had back in the day, like trying to find Barry over that man mountain, that sea of humanity? I mean, my goodness, it would have been a nightmare. And they played on turf as well, so just imagine him at Texas Stadium running roughshod, doing
That's a great point, because one of the highlights ended with Lomas Brown picking up Barry Sanders in the interview. And Lomas Brown is a man mountain, right?
Yes, he is.
And picking him up, and it looked like he was picking up a little kid.
Picking up his son, yeah.
Right?
We did it, didn't we, son? We did it, Junior. But this is a grown man. He's one of the best running backs in the history of the game, and he looked like a little kid.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
It is absolutely crazy. But to me, you know, again, growing up in Detroit, you know, it goes to the Ford family. You know, it has to begin and end. You can say, well, they didn't have good coaches. They didn't have good. It begins and ends with your owner. You know, similar to what we talked about, the Suns got a very interesting offseason coming up, and it begins and ends with their owner. The Ford family sucks. They make nice cars, I suppose, nice trucks.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Give me a Mustang.
Yeah. Absolutely.
But they suck at running football teams.
Give me a Ford F-150 too, or F-250.
There you go. They suck at running football teams.
I mean, Mike, look at what just happened with Matthew Stafford. I'm sure Matthew Stafford probably has some of those same conversations we just talked about. I'm sure there's about 3 or 4 where he's like, I really can't believe that they actually took that stance. I can't believe that they're not willing to work with me here, and I'm doing everything that I can to help them win. Barry Sanders, in his brilliance, only had 1 playoff win, Mike. Think about that, in 10 years.
And you didn't learn your lesson with Calvin Johnson.
Calvin Johnson? How about Barry Sanders? How about Billy Sims?
Well, okay, we can go all the way back if you want. Steve Owens before him. Believe me, I feel that.
Yeah.
I feel it. But what I'm saying is, like, the era, right? So whatever happened to Billy Sims, unfortunately for him, happened in the 70s before they got a lot of coverage. Steve Owens before Billy Sims. Point taken. But
what was the common denominator?
The owners.
The owners.
But my point is, the way that the Barry Sanders thing went so public in terms of how he left and why he left.
He was the all-time leading rusher, Mike.
No, exactly. That's my point. Like, this blew up and you look so bad as if you're the Ford family.
Right.
So if you're smart, if you can run a multi-trillion-dollar auto company and you should be able to figure these things out. You should be able. So the next time it happens, Calvin Johnson, don't do what you did to Barry Sanders. Treat the man with a little respect.
Yeah.
Make the man feel like you appreciate what you're doing while he wears your uniform. He's wearing your uniform.
The list goes on and on, Mike. We talked about Barry Sanders. We talked about Billy Sibbs. We talked about, there's so many, Mike. I mean, the list just goes on and on. How many guys can you name off of those old Detroit Lion teams that were great players? They're considered one of the tops. With Alex Karras, wasn't he a Detroit Lion, Hall of Famer as well? I mean, I'm sure he's got some stories as well. The underlying theme of it is, you talk about an organization that is not run well, but yet you had some of the all-time great players at their positions play for this team, and they have, other than their Hall of Fame ring and jacket, they have nothing to show for it, which is a lot. I mean, the Hall of Fame ring and jacket is significant, but other than that, they don't have championship rings or anything like that.
I posted something on social media recently, and again, this is very Detroit-centric, but a player by the name of Al Baker played for Detroit.
Yep.
Bubba Baker.
Bubba Baker, yeah.
And he played at a time before they counted sacks as an official stat.
Yeah.
And they did an interview with him now that they're recognizing his numbers, saying that literally he sat on his couch and cried when he read that.
Wow.
Right? And you talk about a guy, again, here's a guy that I caddied for him once in a golf tournament.
Wow.
Nicest man in the world.
Wow.
Nicest man in the world. He's like 6'8".
Yeah. Big man.
Big man. Gentle giant.
Yeah.
Couldn't play golf worth a damn. He was at a charity tournament, but the nicest man in the world. But you talk about a guy who toiled in a city like Detroit, and then when he gets recognized 30-plus years after he played the game, his daughter called and said, hey, I found that he sat on his couch and cried when he heard about that.
I mean, that's sad, Mike.
Right? And it shows you, again, the Ford family, because this is the common denominator all the way back.
All the way back.
All right. Speaking of owners, this was kind of the warm-up.
Yeah.
This is the hors d'oeuvre to our owner segment in the NFL.
Yeah.
Look, I don't know where I want to go with this. I mean, the story is the NFL took an extremely hard line as it relates to COVID vaccinations with personnel. So you're talking about non-players. So anybody who's affiliated with the teams, I think they call them Tier 1 employees is what I read.
There you
go. So coaches, trainers, anybody who's in the facility on a daily
broadcast
basis
teams,
doing anything related to the team.
Yep.
And then there's the separate issue with the players. Well, it's really the owners in the NFLPA.
Yep.
In terms of the decision they came down with in terms of the penalties, and it really is, penalties might be an understatement, of what will happen if teams have to forfeit games due to COVID issues in 2021. We dealt with it, I thought, fairly well in 2020. We had some skewed up schedules where we were playing games on weird days. A couple of teams got kind of disadvantaged with the way they shuffled games around, and you play a game on a Sunday, then you don't play again till the following Thursday, but then you got whatever. So you had some weird scheduling.
We had games every day of the week last year.
For the first time ever. But to the NFL's credit last year, and we talked about this when they crowned the Buccaneers the Super Bowl champions.
They got through it.
They got everything done. They did not miss any football games last year. They're taking a hard line this year, and they're going to penalize teams, and they're going to penalize all the players. And I always throw out that 53-man roster thing. So if a 53-man roster, if the team misses a game due to COVID, say they have a couple players test positive, they can't play, the entire 53-man roster is penalized and won't be paid, and the game will count as a loss in the standings for those teams.
So, Mike, I got a lot of feelings. I got a lot of thoughts about this.
As I thought you would.
Mike, this is bullying at its core. This is nothing short of bullying. At the core of this, the one thing I'll give the NFLPA credit for is that they fought and they said that players had the option, because that was the biggest thing. Like, the owners wanted everything to be mandatory that you got the shot, mandatory that you were vaccinated, and the NFLPA said, no, we're not going to do that. So once they didn't get that, once they didn't get autonomy and total control, then they levied all this out. Okay, well, we're just going to turn the players against each other. The guys that are playing or the guys that are vaccinated are going to look at the guys that aren't vaccinated. But here's the thing, Mike. Here's a few things that they didn't look at and they didn't think about. What if you get an outbreak and it's a player that's been vaccinated? How are you going to treat that then? Because now they've got all these harsh penalties against players that aren't vaccinated, and if it comes back that they're the original contact that started the whole thing in the organization, then yeah, not only do they lose their money, but the team that they're playing loses their money as well if they can't come up with an alternate date. So now you've got guys that are 53 on their roster, and they're making league minimum. They need every cent that they can get.
Yeah.
So they're going to look at those guys that aren't vaccinated and say, like, hey, man, you're costing me money. So now the NFL wipes their hands clean of it, say, hey, look, we're saving face. Look, we're doing all we can, per se, to try to make sure that this is covered. But you're not testing everybody that walks into those stadiums.
Right.
If you're so worried about COVID, why do you have jams-packed stadiums? Why do you have 65,000 people in a pod, basically, to watch these guys run up and down the field for 3.5 hours? Yep. If you're so concerned about the health of the people that are working for you, then why are you exposing them to all of these outside factors, i.e. the fans, the people that you actually want in the building in the first place?
It's because we all know what they're really
It's about money.
Yeah, they're not worried about the health.
They don't want to have to pay for it. They don't want to have to get sued.
Yeah, they're not worried about the health of anybody. They're worried about the health of their product they're able to put on the field on Sundays, Mondays, or Thursday nights, and that's really it. I mean, that's all it boils down to. So it's like any other business, though. You know, you're trying to protect what butters your bread, if you will. But here is a quote out of the memo that was sent in to the league, or from the league to the players and coaches and staff members and everything else just yesterday. It says, if a game is canceled / postponed because of a club cannot play due to a COVID spike among or resulting from its non-vaccinated players / staff, then the burden of the cancellation or delay will fall on the club experiencing the COVID infection. We will seek to minimize the burden on the opposing club or clubs. If a club cannot play due to a COVID spike in vaccinated individuals, we will attempt to minimize the competitive and economic burden on both participating teams. But they are saying that they will, last year they moved, let's just, one instance, you had the Titans and the Steelers, right? And the Titans had all the issues, the outbreak, and then there was the pictures of them practicing at the field, the public field, and they were told not to.
Yeah.
The NFL was still okay with that. They fined him or whatever they did. But they moved that Titans game to later in the year, and they bumped the Ravens game up. But that same week, the Ravens had an outbreak. And if you remember, they were going to play, Steelers or Ravens were going to play on a Thursday. Mm-hmm. They moved it to Sunday. Mm-hmm. Then they moved it to Monday. Yep. The damn thing didn't get played till Wednesday.
Yeah, there was a game every day. So every day of the week.
Yeah. But what the NFL is saying in this memo is they're not going to. If it's because of non-vaccinated players, they're not going to do that. You're going to take a forfeit, and if your team is under the 85% vaccination that they're shooting for from each team, you could be on the hook for the financial burden of the whole thing as well.
And I think that goes to, and thank you for that clarification, because I remember that, and it was the Steelers ultimately who really got jostled around with their schedule, and they weren't the team that tested positive.
No.
They were not impacted. To your point, the Titans started the ball rolling, then the Ravens had their issue, and the Steelers are sitting there going, and our schedule gets screwed.
Right, they basically lost a bite.
And I don't think it's any fluke. When you look at where the kind of the pecking order is in the NFL from an ownership standpoint, I'm sure somewhere that the Rooney family, is that the Rooneys?
Yeah, Pittsburgh Steelers, yes.
The Maras are the Giants, right? Those are the kind of the one.
Wellington Maras.
Yeah. So it was the Rooney family going, dude, we got to come up with a plan here so this does not happen to us again. I don't know that was enough to, by Steelers standards, that was a poor season last year. But
they started 11-0, Mike. They get no sympathy from me.
Yeah,
no, that's why I qualified it with by Steelers standards. But I think you'll both agree with me that when the owners are together and the Rooneys speak, even the Jerry Joneses of the world kind of fall in line and listen when it comes to it. So the fact that this came out the way that it did and that already had sign-off from the NFLPA shows me that this was going to happen regardless.
But you can understand people like the reaction we're getting from some of the players. DeAndre Hopkins, obviously, to bring it locally here in Arizona, where you're putting me in a position where It's going to isolate me from my teammates.
Sure.
It's going to put me in a position to where I either have to make a personal choice that I don't want to, it should be my right, or put myself in a position where I'm being told, or my teammates are being told, that I'm jeopardizing their livelihood, their money, their check that comes in each week. So you can understand the reaction.
I understand
of guys
it completely,
like
but it goes back to what you said. What's bigger? I'm not. What in Michael Bidwell's mind? What's bigger?
Yeah,
the enterprise or DeAndre Hopkins?
The game plays.
Screw DeAndre Hopkins is basically what this is.
What the NFL,
he's going to be gone in 3 years or 5, whatever.
Right.
And obviously, kind of goes back to what we were talking about before in terms of that relationship between owners and players. But for me, in this case, that the owners and the NFLPA. This wasn't typically like if there's a rule change.
Yep.
The owners floated an idea.
Yep.
We'll get it in front of the NFLPA. We'll kick it back and forth and see if it works. Look at how long it took to add the additional game. This took a couple of years.
Yeah.
This came out literally overnight.
And for those who maybe didn't see the tweet, DeAndre Hopkins, this tweet has since
caught it before he deleted it.
Deleted. Said, never thought I would say this. But being put in a position to hurt my team because I don't want to partake in the vaccine is making me question my future in the NFL. He then deleted that, but he stood by his statement and some tweets after that. That was on Thursday.
Yeah.
But you can understand. These guys are being put in a position, and you can understand both sides. The NFL is protecting their product on Sunday, Monday, and Thursday.
Yep.
These guys are saying this is my personal decision, and you're putting me in an awkward spot with my peers and my economic future. For me as a brand as well. So I get it from both sides.
But this is what this all is. This is covering your ass if you are the NFL. If you're the owners and you're Roger Goodell, you're trying to cover your butt because now you start talking about the sponsors, the TV stations, the Foxes, the NBCs, the CBSs, the ESPNs who house these games, who put these games on. They don't want to have to pay those guys out of their own pocket.
Sure.
So let's make the players be the ones that have to pay for it because we're the ones that we're ready to go. We've even added an extra game, so we know we're ready to bring product. But if these guys don't do what we ask, because remember, Cole Beasley already complained about this months ago. They've had a protocol for this months ago.
Yep.
But when that didn't work and that didn't deter guys from getting or from not getting the shot, then they upped the ante and said, well, you're going to miss this. You're going to have to pay if something happens, and the other team is going to be penalized. So now you're making the players have to infight because it's going to be a lot of tension in those locker rooms when you start talking about players that have been vaccinated and players that haven't been vaccinated. And that's just not fair because everybody should have the right to decide what they want. This was a global thing, not just the NFL.
And your daily routine, if you're a non-vaccinated player this year, is going to make you feel so isolated from the rest of the team anyway. I don't know if you guys saw it. It came out mid-June. We were so in Suns mode that not a lot of people saw it. But
sure.
If you're not vaccinated, you're still doing the daily testing. Vaccinated players don't have to do that. But where you really get the difference is if you're not vaccinated, you still have to distance yourself in the you can't eat in the same room. So you got to distance yourself. You have to do the grab-and-go lunches. You can't be in a weight room with more than 15 people at a time. You can't leave your team hotel when you travel.
That's bullying.
You can't leave. Yeah, so
that's bullying in every aspect of it.
So you have a completely different day-to-day than the players who are vaccinated if you aren't in the NFL this year. Completely different. Like you are going to be like the outcast in the locker room.
There is that unique nature to team sports, right? And I want to fully acknowledge that. But I also think that, this goes to a lack of a cohesive policy broadly with all this. Because if you recall, again, we were in Suns mode, but the Arizona legislature kicked around, to your point about covering your ass. They passed a law, like basically exempting businesses for COVID-related lawsuits. Like you could be a business owner and you could run the worst business in the world, and the legislature just gave you a pass because you could call it a COVID issue.
Yeah.
Right? So I think, yes, we talk about sports, and there is that unique nature about what we're talking about here. But, it's real. Like, it's real. Like, and I don't know what we do and how we overcome from that. You talk about the NFL, and you brought it up about full stadiums. Alabama has the highest COVID infection rate in the entire country, and they're saying, no, we're playing in a full stadium. So does Alabama care about their players? Right? So I don't know. And, we talked about Rick Dennison before we started recording, and a guy who you spent time with in Denver.
Yeah, he was the old.
And, they said you got to get a shot because you're not a player. You are I think they call it Tier 1 employee.
Yeah, Tier 1. Tier 1.
You got to get a shot. And he's like, no, I'm not going to get a shot. And so he's no longer the offensive line coach with the Vikings. Whether he was fired or he quit, it doesn't really matter. He's not coaching there this year. And on the one hand, I understand that, but that's no different than people in general. If your workplace puts it down, I mean, there was in Houston, there was a hospital that said you guys got to get vaccinated, and there was a percentage of their people that said, "No, we ain't getting vaccinated," and they said, "Well, you no longer work at whatever this hospital is in Houston."
Yeah.
So this is, to me, we talk about football, and obviously we love our sports, and so I understand that, but this is something. It's
bigger
than sports.
It is bigger than sports. This is human rights.
Yeah.
This is a human rights issue.
On both sides.
On both sides. But I mean, if it really is what we claim to be, then you should have the right. Just because we disagree on fundamental things doesn't mean we can't do it together.
Right.
And now you're making, because this is a private entity, you're saying, no, you're gonna do it my way. This is gonna be a dictatorship. And that's what this is becoming, because all this really is the NFL trying to win the court of public opinion.
Yeah.
They want to say, hey, we've done everything we can, and we're going to make sure that we're doing what, but it still didn't address what if it's a vaccinated player that is the guy that is the trace,
or
the contact trace.
Or what if it's a fan in the stands? I mean, I suppose that could happen. I mean, there's enough space, but
in that one quote I gave you guys earlier, they somewhat touch on if it's a vaccinated player. They said if a vaccinated player leads to an outbreak, they will try to minimize the impact it has on them in terms of forfeiture and financially as much as they can. If it's a non-vaccinated player, the team
we're throwing the book at
you. You're probably going to forfeit the game.
Ridiculous.
And if your team is under the 85% threshold that they're shooting for in terms of overall vaccinated players, then you could be financially responsible as well.
And the other side of the coin, where I will acknowledge my argument isn't ideal in terms of comparing the hospital employees in Houston versus NFL players, is I suppose if I'm a doctor or a nurse or whatever at a hospital in Houston and my employer says you got to get a shot or you can't work here, I could go someplace else and do what I do at a place that doesn't require that, if you can find it. In the NFL, if you're Cole Beasley, where are you going to go? Where are you going to go if you're Cole Beasley? You can't say, all right, NFL, I'm going to go over to other league that doesn't have that requirement.
Mike, I want one of those franchise quarterbacks to not take that test. That's what I want. I want one of those guys. Just give me one. One of those top 10, top 5, top 10 guys that says, no, I'm not getting the vaccination. And then we'll see how strong the NFL is on this stance that they're taking, because this is a stance. This is a public display. This is trying to win that court of public opinion, and I think it absolutely sucks to put these guys in that position, because if they want to do what's best for their body and their family, they should have the right to do it. And I'm just saying how it doesn't even make sense if you talk about a player that's not vaccinated, that's the contact trace. But then if it's a guy that is vaccinated, that's that contact. Oh, well, that's different. Isn't the thing supposed to be we want everybody to be safe?
I don't disagree. And big picture, take it way up to what do we call it, the 50, 60,000 foot view. What really sucks as part of this is 3 months ago or 4 months ago, we thought all this was in the rearview mirror.
Yeah.
And we had full arenas in the NBA Finals. You look around places other than Arizona, you got full baseball stadiums.
Mike, think about the Deer District. 65,000 people.
That's my point.
You telling me none of those guys, you telling me there were tests being put out there or given to see if they were COVID positive or negative, and you got 65,000 people losing their mind, hugging and kissing each other, all that kind of stuff in that big mosh pit of a sea of humanity?
That's my point. That's like you can't. I don't know what you do. I don't know what you do. This was supposed to be.
This ain't it.
This is supposed to be over 4 months ago.
This ain't it.
This was in the rearview mirror.
This ain't it. Singling out guys for a life decision that they made was in the best interest of their family. This ain't it. This is wrong.
Ugh.
This is wrong, Mike.
Thought we could talk about football.
That's bigger than football. See, that's the thing. Like, the people that are making these decisions in football think that that football is the end-all, be-all. But no, there's a life outside of football. And every decision that's made in these individuals' lives doesn't always have everything to do with football.
Right. Well, but that goes back to what I said before. Like, what is the owners, and you've told me this, before even we talked about this particular issue that we're dealing with right now.
Yeah.
Like, take it, because people get emotional about this, and I understand that, but take this out of it and fill in the blank with any other issue. And if it came down to, and again, I hate to make this about Michael Bidwell because it's really not, but let's just use it to make the point. If it came down to Michael Bidwell protecting his enterprise or pissing off or putting up one player, even if it's a star marquee player, in a bad spot, what's he going to do? And that's not any owner in the NFL.
He's going to sacrifice the player. He's always going to sacrifice
the player.
Yes.
And if it happens to be a percentage of the player, so be it. That's what this is in this case. You know what I mean? This is what it is.
I want one of those quarterbacks. Just give me one. Give me one that doesn't want to take the vaccination, and I want to see how they respond to that. Because everything is supposed to be, it's the most important position on the field. So now I want to see what happens when that guy says, no, I'm not getting the vaccination. Now what are you going to do? You're going to leave him out of the lunchroom. You're going to leave him out of meeting rooms. You're going to leave him out of the quarterback room and have the conversations with the head coach and the offensive coordinator. You're really going to do that with the guy that's supposed to be the signal caller and the highly paid player on your team? You really going to take that stance? I don't think so.
Tell us about Rick Dennison. You spent time with him in Denver, and he was part of those really good offensive lines that they had up there. And he was really counted on, or going to be counted on, for what they were trying to build in Minnesota. And he walked away from it today, or was pushed away, whichever side of the story you choose to believe. It doesn't matter. Either way, he's not part of the Vikings anymore. But tell us what you remember about him and what the impact that he had on those Broncos teams that you were part of.
Very cool, calm, and collected man. He was a man of very few words. At the time, he was an assistant O-line coach because Alex Gibbs was the head, the main offensive line coach. But he was a guy that used to play. And so, he always came from a player's perspective. He had a lot of respect in the locker room, had a lot of respect from the offensive linemen. And remember, he went to the Minnesota Vikings with Gary Kubiak,
right?
A guy that, who was my offensive coordinator when I was in Denver. So there's always been that relationship with him and Kubes. And so for him to take this stance now, I mean, he's had a pretty long career. He's had a good career. He's won championships in the NFL. But for him to take this stance, I think at this stage in his career, I say good for him. I say, hey, don't be bullied. If you look in the bank account and you're okay financially and you're okay with the idea of not having football in your life anymore, if that's where you feel your life is right now, then hey, go live your life. Yeah. And I think he made a decision that was bigger than football, that was based on him and his family. Hey, you know what? I feel good where I am financially. I feel good where I'm at from a professional standpoint. I've proven my point in the NFL. If I don't want to take this damn shot, I'm not going to take it. So nobody's going to make me do it, and that's the way it is. Yeah, you can have it back. If you want to have all these stipulations and all these rules that don't make any sense, then yeah, you can go ahead and have it back.
And again, huge. You read the story. This is huge for the Vikings because they had some transition. Gary Kubiak retires. His son steps up to fill that void. And having Rick Dennison there was supposed to kind of help bridge the gap. So,
Mike, this hurts them on a professional level because remember now, we still don't know what's going to happen with Aaron Rodgers.
That's where I'm going with that.
So the Minnesota Vikings had a chance to really, get a stranglehold on this division.
Well, you look at the Vikings, like look at what Dalvin Cook did last year with,
and their Justin Jefferson, their wide receiver.
Exactly. I mean, this was kind of one. So,
cut off your nose and spite your face. That's the way I see it.
Let's see. All right, we'll step aside here. I don't even know what we're doing. I got my notes here. We'll figure out. We'll do something on the other side. And still to come later in the podcast, dad jokes and pump the brakes. That's coming up on Train and Grose.
Train and Grose.
Welcome back, Train and Grose. Speaking of news we didn't expect,
all right.
Friday, Texas, Oklahoma said, hey, we might be going to the SEC, guys.
Hey.
Deuces.
And, of course, that set off shockwaves around college football because it really is, whatever else it is. This is the college football news. I understand Texas and Oklahoma will pick up and move the entire programs in, but this is a decision driven by football and a lot going into it. And like a lot of the other conversations we have, it really is dictated by money. You know, you look at it, Texas and Oklahoma would each owe the Big 12 upwards of $76 million if they were to leave on the timeline that they announced. But if a new agreement is reached with the SEC, that would make that price tag easily affordable, because it does show the gap between the SEC and some of the other conferences, but particularly the Big 12, which is where they're leaving. And I've got so many questions, because on the one hand, a couple years ago when this was all happening, well, maybe a decade ago now, when the last major changes happened, there was thought that we'd see even more consolidation. If you recall, there was conversation that perhaps Oklahoma and Texas would come here to the Pac-12. That didn't happen, and there was a lot of reasons why it didn't happen at the time, but it didn't happen. Things seem to have settled down a little bit, and you thought with the expansion of the college football playoffs, where they had every conference represented, and their but money talks. And, you know, you look at high-profile names. I mean, we can talk about the quality of football being played by the Texas Longhorns, which you've done regularly. You know, it's not been up to historical standards, but it's the name that they're taking, not the wins or losses on the
and the Longhorn
field.
Network.
Exactly.
Mike, this is big bank take little bank. You know, in the words of the immortal rapper Ice Cube, big bank take little bank. When you've got all the money and you've got all the attention, you want to make sure that you are well represented when you go into the college football playoffs, because if they do, because there were two stories. That one was they were going to pretty much, let it go through as far as the 12-team playoff. Like they were just going to, rubber stamp that. They were just going to let that go through. There wasn't a lot of opposition to that.
Right.
But I think if you are in Alabama, if you're at Clemson, and if you're Oklahoma, you're like, wait a minute, this is going to affect my long term here, because now you're bringing other teams into the mix as far as recruiting. And the thing that they really were able to do, they were able to recruit, because they're like, look, if you're going to want to play in the playoffs, you need to come here. We're the ones that are routinely in the playoffs. If you're Alabama, if you're Clemson, and you're Oklahoma, that was basically 3 of the 4. And then you always found somebody else that whether it was my alma mater, Notre Dame, or another team in the SEC, or maybe a Big Ten champion every now and again, Ohio State.
Yeah, Ohio State.
So, those teams pretty much racked up on the recruiting, because they were the ones that were going to be representing in the playoffs. So now that you have 12, everybody's like, whoa, well, how is this going to affect me? So now you got this power play by the SEC. And don't tell me that it was Texas and Oklahoma going to them. I believe that the SEC went to them and like, hey, you guys want to play with the big boys, you want to really get that money, let's go ahead and make this thing officially 3 conference teams, or 3 conferences that are going to be basically the major players as far as the football playoffs is concerned. Because you could talk about the Pac-12 all you want, they're going to go bye-bye if this goes through. And then you talk about the Big Ten, Ohio State, they're going to be knocking on the door of the SEC as well. Like, hey, you guys got room for another one? Because when you talk about Ohio State, strength of schedule sometimes comes into play when they start beating up on Northwestern and Iowa and all these other schools that don't really, Maryland, that don't really matter. Those wins actually go against them when you start talking about the credibility as far as ranking and strength of schedule and all that kind of stuff. So I think that we're not even close to seeing the end of this. I just think these are just 2 more big pieces that are really doing what inevitably is going to be done across the board. It's going to be 3 major conferences. It's not going to be 5. And between those 3 conferences, if you're not a part of those, you're going to be left out of the playoff picture.
And I saw it earlier today, and I, for the life of me, can't find it. There was a graphic that somebody put out there. I thought it would have been Barstool, because it was right up their alley, but it wasn't, of where everybody's going to land when this all shakes out, right? And, and you look at the numbers, and I forget how many it is, but the 1A basically football program. So you got the basically what you do is you blow out like the Mountain West and somebody else, and then you disperse. But to your point about the leftovers, like in this graphic that I saw, and again it was just somebody's opinion and it's not happening. The Pac-12 got Texas Tech, they got BYU, they got...
Oh, great.
Yeah, right?
That helps your conference ratings.
Yeah, and the other question I have is going back to 2011, when the last time that we thought, and you're close to this, there was a real thought that Texas and Oklahoma were coming back in 2011, and for whatever reason it didn't work out. And part of the reason was the Oklahoma legislature said to the Oklahoma schools, you can do whatever you want,
bring little brother with
but you do it together.
Bring little
it's
brother.
Like when mom told you had to take your brother with you wherever you went. Right? So
I was that little brother, Mike. It worked out.
Yeah, so you guys know, and I was the big brother, so I take your brother with you.
Yeah.
Right? So Oklahoma, you want to go to the SEC, that's cool.
Take Oklahoma
State with you.
There you go.
And if the SEC is interested in Oklahoma, are they interested in Oklahoma and Oklahoma State?
No, they're not.
And so, will the Oklahoma legislature 10 years after the fact intervene on that is another question, or will they allow them to split up? But it's so many questions about that. And I don't think it's a foregone conclusion. The SEC front office hierarchy might think it's a good idea. Mm-hmm. There's still a little bit of bad blood for Texas A&M. And
they are pissed. They are salty about this.
And they're not happy with Missouri. Like the Missouri to the SEC to this, like if they could spin Missouri out as part of this,
yes,
I think they would.
Yeah. I mean, what has Missouri won since they've joined the SEC?
Well, and that goes to how these marriages have to work for everybody, right? And I think, when it comes to a vote, because I guess the SEC is like everything else, the presidents will get around a table and they'll say, we have a motion in front of us.
Yeah.
We're going to bring Oklahoma and Texas in. All in favor, say aye. And, do you get 100% buy-in?
Who's going to say no to those brands, Mike? If you can have those brands in your conference, doesn't that boost your conference? Doesn't that make your conference look that much more attractive? Doesn't that bring more kids to want to be in that conference because they're playing all the brand names that they've seen on college football since they can ever remember? And Texas and Oklahoma, more Oklahoma than Texas, but I think that they're a brand that people are associating with success. You think about the last 2 out of 3 Heisman Trophy winners. They back-to-back, and then you had the one that finished number 2. You know what I mean? Right. You had Jalen Hurts finish 2 in the Heisman. So they almost had 3 straight Heisman winners from one school, from Oklahoma. So, yes, they're going to bring a certain cachet to the SEC because they're just that big. They're just that big of a program, and Boomer Sooner is going to be all through the SEC. And then UT, when you talk about the Longhorn Network, now you're talking about money going into more money, and now you combine the SEC with the Longhorn Network. I mean, my goodness, it's just they're going to be printing money, Mike. It really comes down to a financial decision, and it really is inevitable when you really think about what's really at play here.
So I'm reading a quote from Brett McMurphy, who's covered college football for decades, and his comment here from earlier today. Texas and Oklahoma officials reach out to the SEC in late December. Closest source to the network told us UT and OU are in lockstep. Whatever one does, the other's doing. They decided they were leaving, and now it was just a question of where. And apparently they also talked to the ACC about this as well, if you believe this reporting. So a couple things there. This was them apparently deciding that they've had it with the Big 12, basically. And apparently my question that I raised that was lingering from a decade ago, that Oklahoma must have it on good authority that they're going to be able to separate from Oklahoma State as part of this. Otherwise, I think that they wouldn't put them in a position to put it publicly if they knew they were going to get blowback like they got a decade ago.
Mike, this really goes to show, too, what they thought of their interstate rivalries. A&M felt they had to leave the conference in order to find themselves and find a niche for themselves. Now you're going to be brought back, and of course everybody's going to want them to renew that rivalry with Texas A&M. And Texas A&M is like, no, we don't want them no more. We left them a long time ago. We've moved on. That ship has sailed. That there's water under that bridge now. We don't want anything to do with the University of Texas. We're here in the SEC. We're good. And now they're going to come to the SEC. So I know those alumni and A&M are spitting mad right now. They are beyond pissed because they thought they had a great thing going being in the SEC. Yeah, UT, y'all can do your thing over in the Big 12, but we'll handle this SEC situation. And now that they've come to play with the big boys, they're going to go back into the pecking order as underneath the University of Texas.
Well, right, and I seem to recall that there was some questions posed to the Texas athletic director about, well, what are you going to do about the rivalry with Texas A&M? Just because they left doesn't mean you shouldn't be playing them. And there was a comment to something to the effect of, don't worry, we're working on it. I don't think anybody knew this is what they were working on, because they're going to get lumped in the same division together. So
but of course
they'll be hooked up, at the hip again.
They'll be back playing on Thanksgiving again.
Speaking of little brother.
Yeah.
Speaking of little, I mean, you've told us that story about the love lost between those two institutions.
Oh my gosh.
And that's how far is Austin from College Station? I don't even know the geography of Texas.
So Austin is about 2.5 hours away from College Station, because my mom grew up in Navasota, which is about 20 miles from College Station, and I know from Houston it's a 2 and some change drive, because I've driven that many a times.
Yeah.
Last time I went was a couple years ago to my niece's graduation. She graduated from UT. But so you basically talk about two and a half hour drive. But you're talking about kids all over the state that go to high school together, and they choose either one or the other. And of course, there are tons of other schools in Texas, but when you start thinking about the big name schools in Texas, it's University of Texas, and then there's Texas A&M.
Well, and you made a good point before we started recording this. What about Baylor? What's going on in Waco right now?
Hey, they haven't even gotten their championship rings yet. This is a school that's had some champions here recently, some national champions, and they're like, wait a minute, we're chopped liver here? Like, wait a minute, I thought last we checked we won the whole tournament in the NCAA. Right. Why are we not being considered one of the top teams that are going along to the SEC? So, they're all in the same state. So from a geographical standpoint, it's not that much more of an inconvenience to bring one with the other, because you still got to fly to Texas if you're going to play these teams.
It's interesting it will be interesting to see how'd you like to be the Big 12 conference commissioner this morning?
No, you feel like
you wake up this morning, you're like, damn, to your point, man, look at Baylor, look at, and getting ready to start the football, having media days, because I think that's happening right now around college football.
Emperor has no clothes, man.
Right? Oh, by the way, guess what?
Yeah. How awkward would that be if you had UT and OU play in the Big 12 championship this year, though?
All right. See you later. Sayonara, suckers.
We're going to take this with you. Yeah, we're going to take this with us.
We'll take the trophy with us on the way out. From a Big 12 statement earlier today, Oklahoma and Texas are founding members of the Big 12, and we value their traditions and history of success.
And we value their money, most importantly, because that's what we were all about.
The 8 members strongly desire to retain the current composition, which has proven it can compete at the highest level.
Wait, hold on, Mike. Stop there. I didn't mean to disrupt you, but say that again. So it's the Big 12, but how many members?
8.
It's back to when Dan Minucci played in the Big 8. Attaboy, Butch.
Wow. Keep going. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to disrupt you, brother.
There is a recognition that institutions may act in their own self-interest. I believe that's another word for selfish. However, there's an expectation that members adhere to conference bylaws and enforce the enforcement of the grant of rights agreements. This is a time for dramatic change within intercollegiate athletics that presents both opportunities and challenges, and the Big 12 looks forward to continuing to play a major role in that evolution. The most valuable player, ladies and gentlemen, today from the Big 12 is the dude that wrote that press release trying to put a positive spin on a brutal day in the news for them.
And Mike, think about this. When you talk about Texas and Texas A&M, this goes way beyond just them being in the same conference, because there are 2 other schools that occupy the same state, Iowa and Iowa State. They're in different conferences, but they still find a way to play each other each and every year, and it's still a big deal. It's still an interstate rivalry that those players grow up wanting to be a part of. Those kids that grow up in Iowa, they either choose University of Iowa or Iowa State.
Absolutely.
And that game means a lot to them in that state of Iowa. So the fact that Texas and A&M keep playing it like it's not a big you're kidding themselves.
And you could figure it out if you wanted to.
If you really wanted to, you could.
And I think that's a great point. Iowa and Iowa State never miss a beat. Ever. Some years it's a great game, other years not so much, but it always gets played.
It always means something in the state of Iowa.
Keeping it close to home, in the Houston Chronicle today, the new commissioner of the Pac-12 gave an interview and said that they would be open for business if the right opportunity surfaces. And I would imagine the reaction, if you're not the Big 12 or the SEC, if you're the new commissioner of the Pac-12, he'd be like, wait, I'm still unpacking boxes here. Like, I need a little bit of breathing room. But what he went on to say is, I consider the Pac-12 an exclusive club with a high barrier to entry. This was, again, in the Houston Chronicle. I love the schools and the teams we have today. We are not actively seeking look at the word choice here. We are not actively seeking to poach any teams from any conference, but we'd be foolish not to listen if the schools call us. Again, that's new Pac-12 Commissioner George Kilikoff in an interview today with the Houston Chronicle.
Back channels. And let's talk about let's talk about the Pac-12, and let's ask Colorado how that's worked out for them since they've become a member, because they're one of the newest members of the Big 12. How's that worked out for them joining that conference? Has that elevated their status? Has that elevated their brand at all by being part of the Pac-12? Because they're not considered one of the big teams in the Pac-12.
All. Not even close. And the only thing, and I think I'm fair in saying this, the only thing that Colorado has brought to the Pac-12 is the Denver TV market.
Is that a great market?
Well, I mean,
in the big scheme of things. Well, I mean, I know those are great fans, but I mean, in the big scheme of things.
It's better than anything else they've done, to your point. It's not because they're bringing the high-profile football program that's playing at the highest level. Their basketball team's been okay, but not great. They don't even play. There was some thought that Larry Scott was going to put pressure on them to bring baseball back, because baseball is a very high-profile sport in the Pac-12.
Yes, it is.
And they're the only member of the Pac-12 that doesn't. Utah plays baseball.
Utah's done well, I think, for the conference in the last 5 years. Wouldn't you say? I mean, they've made a playoff appearance,
But where did Colorado come from, though? Where were they purged from?
Right.
The Big 12.
I'm with you.
And the teams from the Big 12 don't necessarily translate well to the West Coast.
Yeah.
That's all I'm saying.
No, I think you're entirely right. So you look at it, if you're the Pac-12, on the one hand, it's an exclusive club, if you believe the commissioner. On the other hand, let's assume that this Oklahoma-Texas thing is a done deal. And this isn't a negotiation like, hey, we want to go to the highest bidder.
It sure sounds like it.
Wink, wink, nod, nod to the Pac-12. I mean, we'll give them the benefit of the doubt because, again, this story broke quick, but let's just say it's done.
Yeah.
What's left? Assuming, to your point earlier, assuming Ohio State isn't on the move, or like what are you happy?
We just hadn't heard about it.
Well, no, but my point is, are you happy with, damn, they got Oklahoma and they got Texas. Man, I'm going to jump in, then I'm going to grab up some Baylor. I'm going to grab up some Texas Tech. Give me a side of BYU while I'm at it. We're going to, like, what are you going to do here? Like, it's SEC's the 800-pound gorilla doing whatever they want to do.
I mean, and you think about Mike. Think about this: if this goes down and Texas and Oklahoma go to the SEC, and then you still have the 12-team playoff, there's no way you can't tell me half of those slots won't go to SEC. You can't tell me that.
It's gonna.
You can't tell me.
No, it's gonna.
They're gonna bring all of that money in. So it's just it just keeps the process going. They're gonna get all the playoff money. They're gonna get all the money from the TVs and all that kind of stuff. So it's just gonna be the SEC, the rich getting richer, big bank take a little bank.
To your point, what did Colorado bring? Or no, I guess you asked the question. I told you the Denver TV market.
Yeah.
Denver metropolitan area last year was the 17th biggest TV market in the United States.
Wow.
And that's still the best thing that Colorado's brought to the table for the Pac-12.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Because to Sean's point, I think you could make an argument that Utah basketball and Utah football have accorded themselves well. Relative to the rest of this conversation. Like if you were to fast forward, what year did they come into the conference? Was that 2011 as well?
Roughly.
Yeah. So let's do a 10-year checkup on this. And
how many conference titles for Utah football?
My point. Like,
how many conference titles for Utah basketball?
If you're grading the two of them, you'd keep Utah over Colorado purely from a competitive standpoint.
And they haven't done anything. They haven't really gotten to the mountaintop of the conference.
Right. So Colorado was supposed to be the gem here, too. Because they were coming out of the Big
12.
12, 8, whatever.
Yeah, right.
Whatever it is.
I think it's Big 12.
I think it's the Big 12 with the Roman numeral 8.
And then you got the 16-team Big 10.
And Salt Lake City is the 30th biggest TV market. So, it's to your point about the translation of you got the West Coast versus the Rocky Mountain West, right? Yeah. And, these cities. So it's tough because, you've got these things. And I go back to the SEC. Like, if they had a do-over on Missouri, they'd take it.
Yeah.
They'd never admit it, but they'd take it.
You should have a 10-year referendum on each team that joins the conference.
Like in soccer over in Europe.
Yeah,
we'll give you 10 years to fit in, and if you don't, we can kick you out.
If you haven't won the conference in 10 years, you got to go. You hadn't brought anything to the table.
Missouri, you're out.
Missouri, A&M, you're out.
Yeah.
I don't care. I mean, yeah, you had the Johnny Manziel experiment, but that didn't bring you a SEC championship.
How would that feel in College Station? You know what? We're going to make a change here in the conference, and Oklahoma, Texas, you're in, A&M, Missouri, see ya.
Holla.
How'd you like to be the football coach at Vanderbilt right now?
Oh. But they're grandfathered then though. They're not going anywhere.
No, but hey, big news in the conference today. Yeah, what's going on? Texas, Oklahoma coming in.
I mean, hello Tennessee. You know, there's a lot of teams that would be nervous if you had a 10-year referendum on being in the conference. You got to do something to keep your membership.
Yeah, they talk about that all the time in professional sports. You should have what's it called? Where they have in soccer
relegation.
Thank you, relegation. I knew it ended in a shun. But have you had relegation in college athletics?
What's wrong with that?
SEC's at the top, and I don't care. Just for the sake of discussion,
if all this money's involved and you're supposed to be doing all this stuff and it's supposed to make sense, then there should be some sort of tangible evidence that it worked.
Yeah.
10 years. You got 10 years.
Your football program can drive it, and the rest of your athletic department benefits from it.
I mean, Mike, think about it. 10 years, that's at least how many? That's what? 6 draft classes?
Yeah.
Or 6,
recruiting classes.
Recruiting classes. There you go. Not draft classes. Recruiting classes. That's at least 6 recruiting classes. If you can't get it done in 6 recruiting classes, you got to find something else to do. Because at that point, you're just a hanger-on. You're just here to collect the check at the end of the year from the guys that are putting in all the work. You know, you're waiting on Alabama to like, hey, come on, Alabama. We've been waiting on that check, man. Come on with it.
And that's so funny, too. And I'm glad you said that because I always laugh at schools like, I understand the rivalries, but like Michigan fan, pointing their fingers at Ohio State. But when they bring that money back,
they're so happy.
Bring that money back.
And that's another school that's going to be without a conference because nobody wants as big as the brand is. And no offense, Mike, Michigan hadn't really done anything of notice in the last 10 years.
Not at all. No, and if you read,
who wants Michigan right now? Does the Big 12 want Michigan? Does the SEC want Michigan?
Look, I've made this argument all along.
Pac-12?
When you look at,
I'd take them.
Why? But why?
Because the brand you just talked about.
But they don't give you anything. They don't bring any sizzle to your conference.
It's the big house. It's the I don't know. It's just
no.
People talk about it.
No, those days are gone. That whole day of tradition and that's got all of this. It's done.
We're Michigan man.
Thank you. That's where you're right, and this is where the difference is, right? Because from a competitive standpoint, you're absolutely right. And I've said this about other schools. So if I'm being honest about it, I got to say it about Michigan. Bo Schembechler ain't coming back. 1970 is gone. Because I do that to Nebraska fan all the time.
Yeah.
Oh, we should be this. Oh, we should be that. We're Nebraska. We're the black shirts.
No,
you ain't.
No,
no. And you've talked about Texas.
Yeah. I've talked about my alma mater.
Darryl Royal ain't coming back.
Earl Campbell ain't walking through that door.
Right.
Vince Young ain't walking through that door. I guess he is, but not quite.
Maybe Notre Dame's figured it out because they were right. Maybe they have. The jury's out. They're not being relegated.
No.
But the jury's out. Texas hasn't figured it out. Nebraska hasn't figured it out. Michigan hasn't figured it out. You can go whatever you say about Michigan, you could probably say about Nebraska, right?
Oh,
Brand,
absolutely. No question.
No question. In their own way, Nebraska is actually bigger than Michigan.
Yes. Yes. They've won more titles.
And the other thing too, and we're not going to devolve into a Michigan, although we could.
No, let's not do that.
There is a real feeling like Jim Harbaugh was taken behind the woodshed by the athletic director because somebody played back his previous year's comments and conversation at the Big Ten Media Day. Speaking of Big Ten, Big 12, whatever, and compared it to how he was this year.
Yeah. This
was a very withdrawn, a very what was the word they used? Like the verbosity. Thank you, was gone.
Verbosity, wow.
Like this is gone. That's
a quality word, right?
Thank you very much. That's why I struggled to get it. This is not the Jim Harbaugh we saw. This is not the Jim Harbaugh that's like up here like
he's a realist.
You think this tail between legs, Jim Harbaugh?
Absolutely.
I did not see
How could it not be?
At this point.
How could it not be?
If you're Jim Harbaugh, how do you go up there and do anything other than that the way it's gone the last couple of years? And you can say what you will about Michigan, Ohio State. Like, he can't get it done against Michigan State.
Yes and no. I mean,
he can't get it done in bowl games.
I mean, the man does have 3 10-win seasons, 1 9-win season, and 8-5.
But
last
conference
year,
titles.
and that's what it boils down to.
Conference titles and beating your alma or beating your rival.
And winning a damn bowl game.
Yes, and yes.
Yeah.
And I would argue that in some respects, beating Ohio State is more.
It's bigger than the Big Ten
Way bigger.
Conference.
Yep.
If they beat Ohio State,
when you couple losing to Michigan State on top of it, because that was never an issue. It was always
Ohio
Bo
State.
and Woody. It was Columbus, Ann Arbor.
Yeah.
It was Michigan, Ohio State.
Yeah.
Michigan State was in the rearview mirror.
Yeah.
Nobody worried about Michigan State
At all.
And now all of a sudden you get Jim Harbaugh back. You got a Michigan man back. To your point, and you can't even beat Michigan State.
See, ASU
On top of Ohio State?
You can't beat Michigan State.
No.
ASU had no problem with Sparty. Just saying.
Wow.
I was there.
Wow. Wow. I like it.
Yeah, he ain't lying.
I like it. I like it. But I mean, okay, so the whole we love Jim Harbaugh. He's a kooky individual. He's different. He takes his teams on trips to these foreign countries and all that kind of stuff.
Cleats on the sideline.
Cleats on the sidelines, the same khaki pants. All that's gone.
Wearing the glove, throwing the ball around.
All that's gone. Don't nobody want to hear that no more. The Michigan people don't want to hear that no more. They're like, yeah, I mean, it's kind of like that 30-year marriage. Like, that stuff that I used to find so cute, it ain't cute no more.
You surprised he's still there?
No. I'm not surprised he's still there, but the leash is
They can't afford to get rid of him.
Yeah, that's the problem.
Yeah.
He costs too much, which you gave him the cost in the first place. Like, okay.
So it'll be interesting to see. They've got the athletic director in place that's supposed to rein him in, and they made some changes on the coaching staff. We'll see, but I don't disagree with you. Like Michigan would, again, good word. The word of the day. What's that word?
Verbosity.
Verbosity.
No, I like relegation because it's more appropriate.
Yeah. I like it too.
Wow, we sound educated this segment.
The word of the day.
Good for us.
Is
words.
relegation.
Words. Verbosity gets an honorable mention. We got to get at a golf clap for that one. Verbosity, yes.
All right, thank you very much.
And by the way, why did you look twice when I said 30 years and the things that used to impress you don't
my
impress you
anniversary
no more?
this week.
30?
What?
30 years?
30 years.
33.
So if I ask Karen, what's that thing that Mike does at night that that used to be you thought it was cute but not quite so cute? Would she have a few things? Where do we begin?
Well, B-Train, as a matter of fact, get the notebook out. Come on, man. Look at this.
What's not to love?
What's not to love?
Drink it in.
Hold up.
Drink it in.
Yeah, happy anniversary to my love. Yeah, we got married in Phoenix, Arizona on a July 29th. It was 117 degrees.
Smart move.
We got married at the Catholic Church up on Greenway.
Wow.
And the priest, nice guy, forgot to turn the AC on.
No.
Yeah, it was hot. It was hot.
30 years ago. Good for you.
July 29th.
Man.
Did you have on a three-piece?
Oh, I had the late 1980s, early 1990s look.
That's awesome.
The ruffles?
No ruffle.
Was it tan,
No ruffles.
tan and taupe for
It
color?
was black and white. Thank you very much. Man, when you think about that stuff, the ruffles and the off,
ugly
the
browns.
black, like
The bow tie? Did
No,
you do a
no.
tie or bow tie?
No bow tie. No, like I must say I was a little bit lucky in terms of the fashion choices that day, and I'll defer to my wife on that one because I tell people too, like you need to be involved, but you don't need to make decisions.
Yeah.
Like when the decision's made, like yep, I'm all in.
Yep.
Black,
Thumbs up.
black with red I love it.
Yep.
Like,
Let's do it.
Flowers,
Sure.
roses, do it.
Let's
Great
do it.
call. Looks great.
Awesome.
I love me a cow lily.
Yeah.
Like whatever, right? You know what I mean? So
Just no sunflowers. Huh?
33 years of wedded bliss. You put up with that long.
Yeah.
All right. Speaking of that, what? Coming up after the break. Pump the brakes and dad jokes.
Oh, yeah.
On Trading Grose.
Let's do it.
Welcome back in. Final segment, Train and Grose. Glad you found us, hanging out with us on Apple or Spotify, wherever you get your podcast. Thanks to all our subscribers.
Yeah. Good looking out.
Appreciate you.
Always.
Hit us up on Twitter at Train and Grose. All right. You know what time it is.
Yes, sir.
We get people listen to the podcast. People want to be part of the. People send me dad jokes. Speaking of my wife, married 33 years, she drops a dad joke on me the other night.
Wow.
I'm like, you want to be you want in on this?
Come on.
Well,
Everybody gets in on the
Give us
dad
a warm
jokes.
up for dad jokes.
No, I'm not.
Come on.
No, I told her. I
Yes.
said, you can call in. I said, Sean is very talented.
Don't put that pressure on Karen. Come on now. Don't do that.
You want me to do her dad joke?
Do her
What
dad
is it?
joke, man.
What do you got?
All right.
Same rules, though. Same rules apply.
Oh, she gets the same rules?
You're going to get this, but you might, you don't come with it. Come with it, or I'm
All
coming
right, here
at
we
you.
go.
What do you got?
I'm just.
Go ahead, what do you got?
33 years I've learned. I will not qualify this. I'll just say it. All right, I do algebra, tackle geometry, and even a little calculus.
Wow.
But graphing is where I draw the line.
That's pretty good. That's pretty good. That's pretty good. Shout out to Karen.
That's credit to my wife.
Yeah. We love you, Karen. Great job.
That's pretty good.
That's not bad.
All right, so here we go. Pump the brakes. I'm going to give you guys statements around the world of sports, maybe a little pop culture mixed in there as well. You tell me if you're pumping the brakes on that particular statement or if you're riding with it.
Let's do it.
So let's go to the Phoenix Suns. What a difference a week makes. We were sitting here 1 week ago today, as a matter of fact.
Riding high.
It was still a tied-up series.
And no way Suns are losing 2 or 3.
Not a chance. How quickly that changed. So here you go. Pump the brakes or not. The Suns blew the best chance they'll ever see to win a title, considering injuries, health, and the fact that they were up 2-0. They blew the best chance they'll ever see to win a title.
Oh, you got. There's no pumping the brakes on that. That's absolutely true. I mean, it was gift wrapped for them. I know that injuries always play a factor in playoff runs and championship runs, but this one was, you had 9 All-Stars at one point in the playoffs that didn't play due to injury.
Yep.
That was the most by far in recent history. So you think about the Western Conference and how many guys that were out, and the Suns were fortunate enough to play those teams while those guys were out. Every series, you think about the Lakers.
Yeah.
No Anthony Davis, and you get a half of LeBron. You talk about Denver, they got no Jamal Murray.
No Murray.
You look at the Clippers, they got no Kawhi Leonard. I mean, heck, the Milwaukee Bucks didn't even have their guy DiVincenzo, who was the starting 2 guard.
Yep.
So it was a line for them to make it happen, and unfortunately, the Bucks were still a little bit better than the Phoenix Suns.
And you look at how this happens in the NBA, like the Bucks. 50 years since they won one. So you talk about taking that opportunity, and I said this a moment ago. Not making excuses for it, but when the opportunity is presented to you, what do you do with it? And will that path be as easy as it was in the future? There's no guarantee of that. Will you? The way this team is constituted, when you look at chemistry and everything they had working in their favor, there's no guarantee of that. So I'm with you. You don't pump the brakes on that.
No. And the other teams.
And then you were up 2-0 on top of all of that.
Yep.
You were up 2-0
2-0
on top of that. You said to me,
they can't.
do you see the Bucks winning 4 out of the next 5?
Not a chance.
No.
I said, no way. Plan the
won 4
parade.
straight.
Plan the parade.
Yeah. And then we put out on Twitter, will you go to the parade?
And it was, will you go to the parade when the Phoenix Suns win, not if.
Yeah. That did not age well.
I don't think the Suns won a game after we put that.
No, it did
It's
not.
all us, man.
They did not age well. That tweet did not age well.
No.
Yeah, I mean, I'll look back at this as a longtime Suns fan. There's one season that will always stick out to me as the what if. It's 1994. You're up 2-0 on the Rockets. Your Rockets.
My Rockets.
Damn your 94 Rockets.
Damn you.
Never underestimate the heart of a champion.
MJ's out of the way, right? The team that just beat you the year before. MJ's trying to play baseball. Yeah, well, that was 95. The kiss of death.
Same team, though.
Same damn thing. But I think longtime Suns fans think back to that season, and they'll tell you, like, that Jordan was out of the way.
That was their moment.
You thought you had it, and you didn't capitalize. This Suns team will have those exact same feelings, I think, 20 years later.
That was their moment.
Number 2, stay with the Suns real quick.
Yep.
There is no way Chris Paul ends up on another team.
Oh, pump
next
the brakes.
Season. Really?
Oh, I could very easily see him with LeBron. Look, these guys are as close to brothers as you could possibly be without being birthed from the same mother. Chris Paul or LeBron James is godfather to Chris Paul's son. Mm-hmm. These guys vacation together in the off season.
Ride the banana boat.
They met at the banana boat.
Remember that picture?
I mean, the picture,
You know what I mean.
The picture says 1,000 words. I mean, we could just look at that. But they met
are
at
that close.
Yes. Anyway, they met in the Olympics. They figured out that it would, they really liked hanging out with each other. They're similar in age. Yep. And look, I could very easily, and Chris Paul has already played in LA before, so it's not like he's going to unfamiliar territory. And once upon a time, like we talked about earlier in the podcast, he was supposed to be a member of the Lakers. So this would almost be like going back to fulfill that destiny a couple of years later. So I could very easily see him being wild and having the opportunity to play with his good friend.
Pump the brakes.
Oh, you are? Okay. Financially, though, that's going to be difficult for the Lakers to free up that kind of cash.
But again, we talked about
Not if he opts out.
Well, he's definitely opting out.
Okay, so what if he's willing to play for less money?
He'd have to, yes.
Just give him the years and make it up. And I went back to this when this first came up, when the idea that he would first opt out was talked about. There's a couple teams that if you have to do what you have to do, if you have to pay the luxury tax, if you have to, quote unquote, mortgage the future, the Lakers are one of the teams that can do that.
And they are willing to do it every year.
Because what's been happening in Los Angeles the last couple of years?
Unacceptable.
Well, let me
except for the bubble year.
The bubble year, yes, but beyond that, this has not been the stretch that the people that wear the purple and gold are used to. Is it going to happen? I don't know. Yeah. There's so much that goes into that. Who knows where these conversations are happening? What I do know is to try to read into Chris Paul's demeanor and the way he was speaking in a post game right after losing the championship is not the roadmap to reading that.
No.
Right?
No.
So could it happen?
All right,
let's put it this way. If the news breaks whenever these things can start to happen in the NBA that said he opted out and he has agreed to a 3-year, $90 million deal with the Lakers, is anybody surprised?
No. And he said he's definitely not retiring, so that was out.
That's out.
Whatever you want to say, anything else, he definitely said retirement's out.
All right,
so he's playing again.
Let me ask you this. Let me do a little add-on to this particular one because it might sound crazy to some, but there are Suns fans out there that felt this way after the finals. His performance in the NBA Finals, pump the brakes or not, changed the way you thought about extending him with the Phoenix Suns.
Pump the brakes for me. I'm sorry. I don't you can't, in my mind, when you look at the impact and the influence and what Chris Paul meant to this year, the Phoenix Suns this season, you can't separate out a small sample size, albeit on a higher stage, when you're evaluating what he means.
Yep.
You look at the development of DeAndre Ayton.
Alone.
Chris Paul gets a lot of credit for that. You look at we knew what Book could do, but you look at the way he did it and the confidence he did it with.
And didn't have to be a ball handler.
Yeah.
You look at that. So if you're going to judge Chris Paul on a handful of games, understandably on the biggest stage, understand your disappointment in how it went down, that's wrong.
Yeah.
That is absolutely wrong. And I won't be surprised when the story comes out about whatever the injury that he had. We know the shoulder was bad.
The wrist.
We know he struggled with COVID because he missed 2 games because of COVID. Mm-hmm. But he physically never looked 100% in terms of how he was on the court. And then, Sean, you're absolutely right. The wrist. They had it, they talked about it. They didn't show it on camera, but somebody who was at the game reporting on the game said massaging the wrist.
To keep it loose.
And, he would come off the court, even if he was going to get a short blow, he put on the full sweats. Most of the guys weren't doing that. And he was covering up the wrist. So what was going on there? I mean, the story will come out, and there was something. He was not 100% healthy.
Okay, well then, along those lines, let me play devil's advocate for the folks that actually feel that way about Chris Paul. This isn't the first time he hasn't been able to physically make it through an NBA playoff run. That's
been his MO.
He's the only player in history to blow 4 2-0 leads in the playoffs. Yep. So there's that. So you add all that up, plus the emotional feeling you have immediately after your team gets bounced from the finals, that kind of all leads to fans feeling a certain way.
Okay, so did you pump the brakes?
I did.
I'm pumping the brakes too.
All right.
So let's just look at it. Let's break it down numbers. 11 seasons, no playoff appearance. 1 season with Chris Paul.
Finals.
NBA
Finals appearance.
Yeah.
That's even if you took him at his player option at $44 million, he's worth that just because he got you from 11 years of nothing to 1 year and 2 games away, 14 wins in the playoffs.
Yeah.
So, yes, you definitely, if you're Chris Paul, you hold all the cards here. However you want this thing to play out. If you want to do the 1 year 44, I know they would sign him after that. If you want to opt out and get a long-term deal with years and $390, give him the money.
Gee, if you're Robert Sarver, you can't not make this work. Chris Paul has single-handedly redeemed your reputation.
Yes,
but Mike, you said at the beginning of the podcast,
I know I did.
though.
I know I did.
Those were your words. Like, we don't know if he's willing to do it.
I said, and so I followed that up. And I still mean that I don't. But if you are, if he called me and said, Mike,
what should I do?
I'm on the fence here. I've talked to everybody.
Michael.
But you're the final word. Whatever you tell me to, I'm like, are you crazy? Get your damn checkbook out right now.
Cut it.
Because this will never get better for you. You think people still, after all this time, remember that you let Joe Johnson walk?
Amari Stoudemire.
But just think about Joe Johnson, where that team was, and what might have happened if he came back.
Yeah.
And if you let Chris Paul go, you got to do it.
Yeah.
And if you don't, if his mind is made up that he's going to the Lakers, you need to go down fighting. You need to go down fighting publicly.
All right,
because he has saved your ass. He has saved your brand.
You guys talked an awful lot about the potential movement in college football, but I don't know if we touched on this specifically. So pump the brakes or not. From a football standpoint, actually playing the game of football.
Hello.
Play the game. Texas might be making a mistake going to the SEC.
Oh, I don't disagree with that at all. You talk about somebody hurting their brand. The University of Texas is not going to be competitive in the SEC.
Not at all.
They are not going to be a above 500 team in the SEC. They are going to be lucky to be 500.
Dude, and you could, for different reasons, you could make the same argument about Oklahoma. Like, I don't even know how Oklahoma's brand has helped. Because Oklahoma's the big, whatever you want to call them in the Big 12
You're
right
the
now.
draw. You're the draw. Whoever you play, if you're playing Iowa State, playing West Virginia, whoever it is, you're the draw.
But okay, but think about this, though. Oklahoma has been in the playoffs fairly easily in most of the playoffs.
Yeah.
How have they fared in the playoffs when they go against those teams in the SEC? When they played Alabama, when they played Clemson, when they played Georgia, or Clemson's ACC, but when they played those top-tier teams, how did they fare?
So to his point, just purely from a football standpoint, they should both stay.
Yeah, from a Saturday afternoon
they should both stay.
The game standpoint.
They got a better chance of getting to the playoffs in the Big 12.
They should both stay.
Yeah. Now let me ask you this, though. Recruiting-wise, and they both do okay recruiting as is, but recruiting-wise, does going to the SEC, being able to walk into a living room and tell a kid you're going to be playing on the SEC,
that doesn't
stage,
help them.
Does that help them at all?
No, it does not help them, because you already had the biggest recruiting coup in the world is that, look, we can go and pick everybody from this state. University of Texas could have their choice of any kid from Texas. And you know how Texas football gets down in high school.
Yep.
And if you have the pick of the litter from that pool of players, that talent pool in Texas, you can basically build a champion if you know how to do it right. And they haven't done it right. And Oklahoma routinely comes into Texas and takes some of those good players, and they come back and beat Texas with those said players from high school.
Door number one for Oklahoma and Texas is all the money that's involved here.
Yes.
Oh, ungodly.
Door number two is every other reason to stay in the Big 12.
Yeah.
The school presidents are busting through door number one. That's all this is.
Yeah. All right. The Olympics had the opening ceremony in front of nobody. I think it was yesterday. As
Today.
A matter of
It's
fact.
today.
Yeah.
If anybody waved, I'm not watching.
Right. That's what I said too. Like, what was were people waving to nobody?
Did you see it?
I didn't see it.
If I go back and watch it and I see somebody wave at anything, I'm not watching the Olympics. I'm telling you.
I think it happened at like 1 a.m. our time or something.
Stop it.
Yeah.
Stop it.
I don't know, man.
There's nobody in the stands. Who the hell you waving at?
Why are you even having a damn opening ceremony, in my opinion? The whole thing is weird.
You could just have a big convention. You could just have a big dinner with all the different countries. You know what I mean? Like, you could just have a big outdoor party where everybody just, hey, nice to meet you. I'm from Ghana. I'm from the United States. I'm from Germany. You know, whatever.
Yeah.
Dankeschön.
Hey, you know?
So 1,000 Americans were polled. Just 37% said they're very or somewhat interested in the Olympics this year. Just 37%. I mean, 63% say they're not interested. But they were asked, name the event you're most excited to watch.
No, track and field.
See, I would say that too. Not even in the top 5.
I got
skateboarding. So you're clearly going to pump the brakes on this, but pump the brakes or not, swimming is the most entertaining Olympic event.
Entertaining?
That is number one, is what people are most excited.
Watch people move in the water. That's entertaining. You can't even see their face.
43% of those 1,000 Americans that were polled, 43% say they're most excited to watch swimming.
Get out of here. Pump the brakes, man. That's absolutely insane.
Number 2 is gymnastics, 39%.
Okay,
I kind of understand that.
I understand that, Simone. I get that.
Diving is 3rd. Who the hell watches diving?
But you only get to see it every 4 years, though.
That's true. But beach volleyball is 4th, and then basketball is 5th on this list.
You know what? And because beach volleyball is up there, it's one of the reasons I really don't want to watch the Olympics. Because people are watching beach volleyball for all the wrong reasons.
Uh-oh.
Hold up.
He's not wrong. Yeah.
You know, there was a big, one of the teams was fined because the women's volleyball team did not want to wear the required uniform, which is basically
Too much.
bikini bottom.
No,
I saw that.
And they took
Sweden or Finland? One of them.
Finland. It was Finland.
What were they trying to wear?
They wanted to wear biker shorts.
Oh, see, I thought they were going to go the other way.
No. So listen, they took a picture next to the men.
That's way too much.
Yeah.
They took a picture next to the men. The men had shirts and biker shorts.
All right.
The women had bikini tops and bikini bottoms.
Yeah. That's what it's become, man. Yeah. That's what it is.
Who's watching to see them go up and get a nice dig?
20% of 20% of Americans, they came in 4th.
I did open myself up.
Basketball was 19%. Rest of the top 10 was boxing, track and field, baseball, and synchronized swimming.
Did you notice that Simone Biles got her own hashtag?
She's got her own with the
badass.
goat logo and everything. Yeah, absolutely.
On her, yeah. Well.
She's badass.
All right, last one.
All right.
Because we got dad jokes and we've been here a minute.
Yeah.
This was apparently the U.S. Hot Dog Day was like 2 days ago.
How many hot dog days are there? There's at least 3.
So here's the question. Hot dogs are a sandwich.
Oh, pump the brakes. We went through this.
We have not gone through this yet.
Mike and I have gone through this. It is not a sandwich.
Is a hot dog a sandwich, bro?
No.
So you're pumping the brakes too?
No.
Let me read this from
Pump the brakes.
Let me read this from the USDA.
We were so poor, my mom used to make peanut butter jelly sandwiches on hot dog buns.
This is from the U.S. Department of Agriculture.
True story.
Those who voted for a hot dog being a sandwich are not without support.
Oh.
Quote, the USDA says, a meat or poultry filling between 2 slices of bread, a bun, or a biscuit. So by definition, a hot dog is a sandwich.
Then biscuits and gravy is a sandwich too, man, because you got sausage, gravy, biscuit, sausage gravy,
and
biscuit.
then the top biscuit.
Yeah.
That's a sandwich?
Sandwich. There you go.
No.
Yeah,
No,
the
get it out.
Pump the brakes.
They keep trying to put that
To
in there.
each his own, man.
Yeah, but get that out of here. That's weak.
Most
The
of you-
USDA, though, check this. My brother was on the school board, and we were having this conversation. He goes, at one point, the USDA used to say ketchup was a vegetable.
Wow.
It comes from tomato,
Right.
so it's a
the
vegetable.
number 1 condiment on a hot dog, mustard, according to that survey.
You put hot ketchup on your hot dog, don't
I
you?
put ketchup on a hot
Yeah,
dog.
you
What
go,
about
man.
relish?
Love some relish.
Really?
Love relish.
I haven't had relish in at least 2 decades.
I could.
I relish me some relish.
I couldn't tell you the last time I.
Give it to him.
Yeah, I was going to hit you with one of those.
Please.
I couldn't tell you the last time I had relish, but it is delicious. It is delicious.
I don't like anything pickle related.
We
Sorry.
have to make up some ground from last week, so time for dad jokes.
All right, here we go.
Here we go.
You know the rules. You get one of those.
Yep.
If it's a good joke, you get one of these. If it's outstanding, we give you the standing ovation.
There you go.
If it's not so great,
I'm going for standing ovation
it's
tonight.
not so great. We hit you with one of those.
All right, here we go.
Here we go.
I asked my wife if I was the only one she had ever been with,
Uh-oh.
and she said yes. All the others were 9s and 10s.
That's very good.
That's very good.
That's very good. That may
Thank
actually,
you.
we'll
Thank
bump
you,
it up.
thank you,
Actually,
thank
we
you.
actually will.
Thank you.
That's actually
Thank
pretty
you.
good.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm back. I'm back, baby. I told you I'd be back.
So would you say if I was the only one she'd been with, all the others were 9s and 10s?
Bam. And in case you're not paying attention, out of all the things we've ever talked about on the podcast, we've covered a lot of territory.
Yeah.
Bertrand's, he's let it fly sometimes when we agree, we disagree, or something happens.
Right.
Like you do. when you gave him, and he earned it last week.
When I gave him
I don't
this?
mean to, I'm not throwing you under the bus. He earned it.
Yeah.
He was mad.
He was mad.
He was
I was
mad.
like, no. I take pride in my.
Out of all the things we talked about,
yeah.
hey, B-Train, Notre Dame football sucks, and that makes him mad. But when you gave him the horn,
The one, no, man, no. I took that personally. I got like Tom Brady all of a sudden. And can before we get out of here, can we just talk about the damn rings
Dude.
that the Buccaneers got?
They have.
Have you seen that thing?
319 diamonds.
90, yes.
In there. To
319.
represent the score.
31-9.
and I think you both have talked to this guy, on Twitter. He probably was on the radio show with us at some point. Sports Tax Man. I love him. He's like, oh, by the way, taxed as
10
income.
grand.
Taxed as income.
10 grand, and it comes out of your paycheck the next.
You don't get to declare it. They take it from
and
you.
they take
Wait,
it
what are we talking about? What?
So that
That ring is taxed as income,
10 grand.
and it comes out of your paycheck, and it's going to be north of 10 grand based on the valuation of the ring.
Yeah.
Wait a minute. I don't remember being taxed on my ring.
You just didn't notice.
I don't know what to tell you.
I don't know. What was your. So the.
Mine wasn't.
The NFC
It
championship.
wasn't.
But it
was the
still
NFC
had to be
championship.
enough to get to I mean,
Because you get so much from the NFL, and then if the owners want to go above and beyond that, then they can go and bid.
do
The
it.
Buccaneer players have to pay taxes on their championship rings. Normally that comes out to $10,000. That amount is deducted from their week 1 paycheck, and it's based on the fair market value of the ring they received.
Yeah, so the more expensive the ring, the more you tax.
The more diamonds you get.
Well, speaking of the Olympics, I think a gold medal is roughly 10 grand too, if I remember right. Every gold medal you bring home.
But are they? Is it real gold though?
The
Has
gold
to
medals
be.
are, yeah.
Yeah, it has to be. Because you get taxed about 10 grand.
How long is this thing going to go?
I don't know.
No, we
You
gotta
two
go
need
out
to
here.
stop.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Stop it.
Sorry.
Thanks for tuning in. Edition number 40.
40.
Of Train and Grose. Appreciate you following us one more time. Give us a follow on Twitter. Give us some feedback. And be sure to subscribe wherever fine podcasts are found. We'll see you next time.
We'll holler.